I am a product of my time, brought up on television, in a world where men have walked on the moon, unimaginable 100 years ago. In a world of computers and electronic wonders, my heroines came out of books and movies. I am a product of my time, and I feel the need to know more about the women who came before me. Written history seems to be mostly about men. If I am to grow strong in this complex, incredibly fast-moving world, I need roots.
And you shall learn about your roots. Listen to me.
Who are you?
I'm Abigail Adams, wife of John, second president of the United States. I'm part of your past. I think it would help if you know something of your lost history.
How?
Well, if nothing else, it should be a comfort to know that no matter what women were doing elsewhere in the world in 1776, when men were writing the Constitution, I was hoping that women would be declared equal citizens with men. I wrote this letter in Braintree in March of 1776. Listen. My dear John, I long to hear that you have declared an independency. And, by the way, in the new code of laws, which I suppose it will be necessary for you to make, I desire you would remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Do not put such unlimited power in the hands of the husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. If particular care is not paid to the ladies, we are determined to foment a rebellion and will not hold ourselves bound by any law in which we have no representation. That your sex are naturally tyrannical is a truth so thoroughly established as to admit of no dispute. But such of you as wish to be happy willingly give up the harsh title of master for the more tender and endearing one of friend.
And what did he say?
Mr. Adams did not take us seriously. He answered saying, I cannot but laugh. We've been told that our struggle has loosened the bonds of government, that children are disobedient, that Indians slight their guardians and Negroes their masters. But he was shocked that our tribe, as he called us, a tribe of women, should think so rebelliously. His reasons were that women, like men without property, should be excluded from citizenship because he believed those without property would not have good judgment, being dependent on a man of property. I'm afraid John felt that we would be unduly influenced, my dear.
But, Abigail Adams, I don't remember learning about you at school.
Precisely why I'm here. You see, as a girl, I had dreams. I was to be something of a rover, tramping about the world. Well, that wasn't possible for a woman in my day, but it was possible to be a traveler of the mind, to think, to have opinions. Oh, and I had plenty of those.
But you failed to make a dent in the Constitution.
You're right. But it was a beginning.
Massachusetts, 1850. Sojourner Truth speaking at a women's rights convention.
Well, children, where there is so much racket, there must be something out of kilter. I think twixt the Negro of the South and the women of the North, all talking about rights, the white men would be in a fix pretty soon. But what's all this here talking about? That men out there says women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches and to have best place everywhere. Nobody ever helped me into carriages or over mud puddles or gives me any best place. And ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my arm. I have plowed and planted, gathered into barns, and no man could head me. And ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as a man, where I could get it, and bear the lashes well. And ain't I a woman? I have borne 13 children and seen them most all sold off to slavery. And when I cried out with my mother's grief, None but Jesus heard me, and ain't I a woman? Then, that little man over there, he says women can't have as much rights as men because Christ wasn't a woman. Where did your Christ come from? From God and a woman. Man had nothing to do with it.
Do you think it's possible for women to change things?
If the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down all alone, these women together ought to be able to get it right side up again.
Excuse me, but I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Harriet Beecher Stowe. Sojourner, I was so moved by what you said so eloquently, and I simply can't resist saying something to you in regard to my book, Uncle Tom's Cabin.
I find it hard to believe you are the woman the newspapers of your day called the lady who started the Civil War.
It was a surprise. We never expected it to create the furor it did.
Is it true that 3,000 copies of Uncle Tom's Cabin were sold on the first day of publication?
Yes, it was so exciting, I couldn't believe it.
I think I read somewhere you wrote articles for the National Era.
That is correct. It was an anti-slavery newspaper. I wrote pieces for them from time to time, but I never dreamed this one would turn into a novel.
Well, how did it come about then?
Well, it started as a 3 or 4 part story, but somehow I couldn't stop. It ran to 40 installments. It was as if the story had a life of its own. It was difficult for me. I had 7 children, and you can imagine how busy my household was.
Wasn't it unusual for women and mother to be writing on politics in 1851?
Yes, but my father brought us up to have minds as well as souls, and not to be afraid to speak out. He told us that an economy that gets rich off the sweat of Black bodies should collapse.
That's a revolutionary statement, Mrs. Stowe.
It's a common sense statement.
People have said your picture of the South is sensational and untrue.
I was accused of inventing the incidents of my story out of malice, but I have heard accounts of runaway slaves, of torture and abuse, of families separated and sold, just like Sojourner's children were taken from her. I believe any evil that lasts long enough becomes taken for granted, that one human being having the right to buy or sell another human being is evil. In this country, there are many who waver between slavery and abolition. I wanted to make Uncle Tom and Eliza live for them. I wanted my readers to care about people, and if they cared about people, they would never accept the premise of slavery again.
If you done that, you done a lot. You really done something.
Hello, I would like to speak to you women. I was a young woman in Maryland in 1850, and I never met you, but it's time. I'm Anna Carroll. I'm not in the history books either. In fact, you could say I was the best kept secret of the Civil War.
Carol. There was a Carol who signed the Declaration of Independence. Are you related?
Yes, I am. I'm also the daughter of the governor of Maryland.
When was your time?
I spanned a lot of history. My life in the 1860s will interest you most. I was a different sort of woman from my sisters and their friends. Part of me enjoyed the parties, the social life of Chesapeake Bay and Baltimore and Capital Society. I dined with all the eligible bachelors, but
That must have been lovely.
But I was trained by my father to use my mind, and I wasn't sure where I belonged.
I know what you mean.
So I postponed marriage and set up my own business in Baltimore, researching and writing papers in the industry. I became an expert in extracting information from various sources and boiling it down to understandable English.
That is a talent.
What was your involvement in the Civil War?
The Civil War, now that interests me, and then I must go.
Many in my family and among our friends favored the South. Maryland was a border state, but I followed my father. I believe the Union must be preserved.
The Union of the United States.
So, eventually my reports, especially the one dealing with the legal use of presidential power if Maryland seceded, came to President Lincoln's attention. He was impressed, and I might say immodestly that it was a damn fine paper. It was a result of that paper that I joined the cabinet, though not in the usual sense, not an official member, you understand. A woman in the cabinet was unheard of, but I advised and researched. I was on a trip on other government matters when I realized that in order to be victorious, the Union Army must find a way of getting deep inside the heart of the Confederacy.
Do you mean to say the generals didn't have such a plan? That's incredible.
Incredible indeed. They tried to use the Mississippi River and it flowed the wrong way. But not 100 miles to the east of the Mississippi was the Tennessee River, and it flowed the right way, straight to Chattanooga. None of the generals had bothered to consult the riverboat captains about the flow of the river.
By God, leave it to a woman.
So that was the plan that won the war.
Yes, the Tennessee Plan.
I look at you three, such different women, living in different ways at the same time, not knowing each other, but each contributing so much. And here you are. It's remarkable.
Like my little book, you see, it is words and ideas that bring us together. It's been a pleasure, my dear.
I'd like to listen a bit longer.
Mrs. Carroll, why haven't we known something about your contribution toward the winning of the war? Something, anything. There are statues of generals from the Civil War in little parks everywhere. Why not you?
You see, at first it had to be a secret from the soldiers as well as the generals. The president and his advisors felt if the men knew a woman had devised the strategy, they would refuse to fight, or at the very least have no confidence in the plan.
Fair? It is a disgrace. How do you do, madam? I am Susan B. Anthony, and I am shocked at what you have to say. Why did you get no recognition?
You know, there were terrible problems during the Civil War, and when the war between the states was over, President Lincoln was going to give me public recognition, but he was assassinated.
There are no excuses. Infuriating. It was your battle we have been fighting, and where were you? There was a women's movement working for acceptance and recognition of all women. Here it is, 1867, and the movement has been in existence for 20 years. And where have you been, Anna Carroll? Why did you not join with us? We would have helped you.
I was doing my work.
Did you ever consider women's right to vote important?
I'm sure I did. And I had many friends who said I had a brilliant legal mind. If I'd been a man, I might have run for office myself. Who knows? But I had my own work to fill my life.
Infuriating. It was your battle we have been fighting. And where were you?
Her head was somewhere else.
Somewhere else. Everyone's head is somewhere else when it comes to women's rights.
Why are you yelling?
Well, why not? Do you know what the editor of the New York Tribune called me? He said that I was a mannish spinster working out my frustrations because I introduced a motion on women's suffrage. Horace Greeley, the editor, informed me that if I persevered, I could count on no further help from the Tribune. Mr. Greeley insists women do not want the right to vote. Poppycock! In the 20 years since the first Women's Rights Convention, the movement has grown to overwhelming proportions. Still, we are told to wait. We have waited through war, bitten our tongues because we were told a country divided does not need to be further divided. But now the war is over, and we are told this is the Negro's hour. The abolitionists swear this is God's will, and God must be a man. How can we not feel a kinship for all disenfranchised Negroes, paupers, the ignorant, degraded, Chinese, and criminals, as well as women? Why must we be made to choose between the rights of the Black people and female equality?
Please, I have something to say. There is a great stare about colored men getting their rights, but not a word about colored women getting theirs.
It has always been argued that if a woman has ambition, it will bring her discontent.
Then let it bring her discontent.
That ain't it. Oh no, that ain't it. Men have been having their rights for so long, like the slaveholder. They own us. I know it's hard for one who has held the reins for so long to give it up. So I'm keeping things going while we can. Because if we wait too long, it will take a great while to get them going again.
I can see it now. Fear of what women will become once we've gotten what we want.
How dung argument! I ask men, how would you like to have your wishes and your views ignored all your life?
It's hard to believe you were ever ignored, Miss Anthony.
I beg your pardon, but if the government derives its power from the consent of the governed, I am ignored.
It's very simple. Colored men have the right to vote. It's gotta be women too.
Wait a minute. Susan B.'s method was all wrong. She was so hostile. It's no wonder that men didn't support her. Permit me, I'm Victoria Woodhull, and it's 1871. We're in Washington, D.C. at the National Women's Suffrage Convention, and I've just had the most obnoxious floor fight with Susan B. Anthony.
What about?
Well, she has no respect for me. Just because when my family was poor, I supported them by being a clairvoyant. I believe in free love.
What do you mean by that?
Well, free is only a word. Any free man is a whole being, but a free woman is considered contemptible. Free for a man is emancipation from degrading conditions that prevent expansion of the soul. Have we not sacrificed enough women to the hypocritical notion of purity? I'm tired of the assumption that women are ninnies. I'm tired of a society that forces women to make a profession of seduction, of a society where it's considered a reproach to be an old maid. And that was all part of my political platform.
Were you running for office?
Of course, I wanted to be president.
Did you find supporters of those views at the convention?
Well, I couldn't tell. You know, we should have progressed somewhat in our thinking. But then Susan B. Anthony organized the convention, and she is a power in her own right. She renounced free love as free nonsense, and worse. I think that was her problem. She didn't know how to love, freely or otherwise.
Looking back, do you really think the country was ready for that?
Well, why not? It was the healthy way to think of love. I have always given myself because I wanted to, not because I had to.
By that, were you talking about free choice in marriage?
Marriage? Certainly not. After all, the 19th century is modern times. To me, this farce of marriage is public placating of sexual slavery. And there were others who agreed with me. I had the support of Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott.
Surely you know how sex is a more dangerous issue than money or religion, and surely a free love platform would influence many against giving women the franchise.
Madam Woolhall,
Here's Susan B.
we fight in a common cause for serious matters, not frivolous purposes. I remind you to be serious of purpose.
I do not consider sex to be ridiculous.
Fortunately, the following year, in 1872, Victoria Woodhull was expelled from the movement. But stubborn Victoria Woodhull ran for president 5 times. You never knew that, did you?
No, I didn't.
The 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote, was not passed for many more years. And none of us who worked so hard for it lived to see the day.
I wonder, if women had had the right to vote, would history be different?
First, I'll tell you, I've been listening to the last few ladies, and there are better ways for women to work than politicizing sex. They seem to think Kingdom Come will follow the enfranchisement of women. I'm Mother Jones, organizer of the United Mine Workers.
Are you against the vote?
I never had a vote, and I raised hell all over this country. You don't need a vote to raise hell, you need convictions, you need guts. The women of Colorado had the vote for 2 generations, and we were all in slavery, men and women alike, vassal to the Colorado Iron and Fuel Company. I made them angry. At one meeting, one mine operator proposed that women be disenfranchised because some of them raised their voices in behalf of the miners. Another operator yelled, "If not for the women's vote, the miners would have beaten us long ago." I tell you what I told them. I never believed in women's rights or men's rights, but human rights. No matter what your fight, don't be ladylike. God Almighty made women, and society folk made ladies.
So what are you doing with all those mops and pans?
The men were scared to organize, more scared to strike. The company would bring in scabs, and this scared them even more. But I got the women together, the wives who surely suffered for their men as well as themselves. And we'd gather an army of women with mops and brooms and tin pans and raise such a racket, we'd scare the scabs away. This outfit is special, to get attention, to raise a din. It gave the men courage to resist the brutality of the owners. The story of coal is always the same, a dark story. For the privilege of seeing a bed of their children, fathers must work in the depths of hell. The men who work in the mines, it's a life of struggle.
How did you open their eyes to the real issues of your struggle?
I tell them. Oh, I tell them. In spite of oppressors, in spite of false leaders, in spite of labor's own lack of understanding of its needs, I tell them the cause continues onward and they must be part of it. The hell with the scabs. Down with the mine owners. That's what you call making a racket, because it's going to change. We're part of what's making it change. Slowly, very slowly, those who create the wealth of the world are permitted to share. The future is in labor's strong, rough hands. In the west, the southwest near the Mexican border, there were women soldiers who followed the Mexican leader Pancho Villa. In the ruins of a Mexican settlement, wagons of refugees were heading by foot, donkey, horse, and wagon away from the shambles of their village. There was conflict of opinion of which faction set fire to this village: the revolutionaries, the anti-revolutionaries, or the Americans.
What is your name?
Adelita, you can call me, but my name does not matter. No es importante.
Why are you in a soldier's uniform?
I am a soldadera.
But isn't it odd to be a woman soldier in 1913, particularly a woman of New Mexico?
New Mexico, you call it, but to us, it is the same Mexico.
But I always thought traditionally Spanish-speaking people placed great importance on the role of women as wife and mother.
Wife and mother, to be raped, tortured, terrorized in times of war. Women in villages like ours must be strong.
Are you connected with the army of Pancho Villa?
We believe in Pancho, but I do not wish to speak of him.
Well, who is responsible for the burning of your villages?
We do not know, but it could not be Pancho. He is for us.
Is that why you are a soldier?
I'm a soldier because I do what has to be done. It has always been so. We protect the land, and if the men are gone or dead, we do their jobs as well. That is our way and God's will.
Were there many of you who wore the uniform of soldiers?
Many. Es mi vida. It is my life.
Books have said that the Mexicans settled the land here to recruit arms for Pancho's revolution.
School books and teachers, what do they know? We recruited arms to protect ourselves. You see our smoking ruins of houses we once lived in, and you know why we need arms. They blame Pancho for everything.
As followers of Pancho Villa, you placed the United States government in the position of taking sides in a civil war in another country.
The Estados Unidos stole land from a handful of poor peasants. Women and children were no threat, and that's why I am a soldadera. I can shoot with a rifle, but I love, have children, cook, work on the land, cry, breathe, live as I can. But now I must go. They're waiting for me.
I'm with you.
Vaya con Dios as we go with God.
Where are we now?
You must have heard of me. I'm Margaret Sanger.
You were involved with birth control.
Correct. My clinic in Brooklyn was the first in America. It was opened for only 9 days before it was raided and closed down. The law was severe in those days. I could have received a 45-year prison sentence.
Was it worth it?
There are 400 women in Brownsville tenements who will no longer be having baby after baby because of the clinic. Yes, I considered that worth it. I grew up giving out contraceptive information, but that was illegal. But it's immoral and degrading to keep millions of women in sexual slavery.
It has always been a dilemma, Mrs. Sanger, even today.
I think they avoid the real issue. There are those who are terrified of what men may do when sexual pleasure is no longer a male prerogative. I'm afraid they truly believe we shall all turn into harlots, that we might prefer to become scientists or engineers, politicians or musicians seem beyond them.
Do you think women must do men's work? Think as men think?
No. Woman's mission is not to enhance the masculine spirit, but to express the feminine. She must not accept. She must challenge. Her eyes should be less on what is than what should be. Woman must have her freedom of choosing whether or not she shall be a mother. She goes through the veil of death alone each time a babe is born. Birth control is a woman's problem. The quicker she accepts it as hers, the quicker will society respect motherhood. The quicker, too, will the world be made a fit place for her children to live.
I have moments of real terror when I think that we may be losing this generation. We've got to bring these young people into the active life of the community and make them feel necessary. I am Eleanor Roosevelt.
Mrs. Roosevelt, what you said in 1934 has such relevance today. Your words still haunt us.
I was concerned with the despair of the young. All of their energy and idealism were dissipated. It frightened me, the waste of youth. That's why I became involved in the National Youth Administration.
But it didn't work out. Weren't you disillusioned?
No, I was not. When Franklin was elected in 1932 on a platform in which he promised sweeping new reforms, I knew it could not happen fast enough for the ordinary people of the country, much less impatient youth. But I listened. The channels of communication were open. Remember that. Keep the channels open.
And you communicated with women, too.
Yes, that's true. I wrote a weekly column. I encouraged Franklin to name a woman to the cabinet, and he did. Not everyone approved of me. In my time, I was called many things, not all of them kind, but I didn't care. I was never a radical. I believe in people. But here's Emma Goldman, who was a radical. It's 1936, New York.
Are you Emma Goldman? I've heard of you. You were called a radical.
What? Who calls me a radical? I went to prison as a radical because I said women need not always keep their mouth shut and their legs open. Radical is a word, just a word, like a sneeze. Radical who and radical when?
What made you so committed?
I came from a ghetto. Honestly, out of necessity, my life has been largely a revolt. Perhaps the turning point was the Haymarket trial, when I saw 4 innocent men hanged and accused of conspiring to incite a riot. It was horrific. The fact is, they were honest, hardworking men who just wanted their rights. I realized then that only together could we work to achieve justice.
And what did you think of the suffragettes movement?
The right to vote and equal civil rights were important, very, very important demands. It is necessary also for a woman to be equal partners in the workforce. Tremendous change took place when women entered industry. In your time, how many women are wage earners? How many millions of women join men to strike, to work for better conditions? Surely emancipation is complete. No, true freedom neither happens at the polls, nor in the factories, nor in the courts. It always begins in a woman's soul.
But no matter what you're saying, the label sticks with you. Red Emma, anarchist.
Anarchist. Words again, always words misunderstood. I am an anarchist of the spirit, not politically. I say what I've been saying all my life. Change will come. It is coming as our society is reorganized along the principle of economic justice. And someday men and women will rise. They will reach the mountain peak. They will meet big and strong and free, ready to receive and bask in the golden rays of love. What fancy, what imaginative, what poetic genius can foresee the potentialities of such a force in the life of men and women, of a world of true compassion and equality? I believe passionately in individual freedom.
So do I.
Let it not be said that our movement merely wishes to make room for women. As individuals, we must work together towards a more humane society.
Our values. Yes, our values.
I desire that you would remember the ladies.
Any evil that lasts long enough becomes taken for granted.
I look for the day when the only criterion of human excellence is the character of the individual.
If the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down, all of us women ought to be able to turn it back and get it right again.
I believe the union should be preserved.
I'm tired of a society that forces women to make a profession of seduction.
I never believed in women's rights or men's rights, but human rights.
I do what has to be done. It has always been so.
It is immoral and degrading to keep millions of women in sexual slavery.
We must bring the young people into the community and make them feel necessary.
I believe passionately in individual freedom.
Each step toward change came out of so much pain and sacrifice. All these women, and how many more we've never heard of, they are our roots. We are their continuation. I'm Katie Fox. I played the contemporary woman.
I'm Marion Cox. I played Abigail Adams.
I'm Joy Enyinaya. I play Sojourner Truth.
I'm Norma Fox. I played Harriet Beecher Stowe.
I'm Susan Moody. And I play Anna Carroll.
I'm Laurel Liefert, and I played Susan B. Anthony.
I'm Cherry Sokolowski, and I played Victoria Woodhull.
I'm Lauren Daly, and I played Mother Jones.
I'm Lori Lynham, and I played La Adelita.
I'm Erin Frisch, and I played Margaret Sanger.
I'm Francie Liefert, and I played Eleanor Roosevelt.
I am Suzanne Jansen, and I played Emma Goldman.
And thank you to our director, Barbara Fleming. And thank you to all of you.